Hi, this is Brian Pash, and welcome to another podcast. On today's show, I'm pleased to have Steve Roessler. He's the VP of Sales at Drive Centric. Steve, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Brian. Thanks for having me. Appreciate being on the show.
Well, it's been a while, Steve, since we've talked about your platform, and even not too many guests on my show are talking about the dealer's primary communication platform, their CRM. Steve, before we talk about some specific observations and changes in your platform, what is one thing that you've noticed as a result of the COVID pandemic on how your customers have pivoted on how they use your platform?
Yeah, it's really a great question. I think they're utilizing the tool now more than ever. I think just because of the communication, whether salespeople or BDCs are working remotely from home. But in this day and age, we've always been a big proponent of texting and personalized video, as you know. Obviously, you can still do the emails and phone calls, which we all support. But at the end of the day, customers right now, because more people are home than ever, they'll communicate via text much faster than they will via email, and the stats are out there. So the first thing I always notice is how many more texts are being done via instead of, like, let's say, the phone calls or via the emails. And that to me is great. I mean, when I start seeing like a 2 to 3 to 4 to 1 ratio, meaning they're sending out, let's say, 12,000 texts to 4,000 emails. That's kind of telling you the engagement aspect of what our customers, we got to listen to what the customers are using as their form of communication and respond back to that. The other thing too is, with video, if you just take a look at what video is doing right now, everybody's doing and talking a lot about video. Even Facebook is talking about like
That's right.
50% of customers are watching these Facebook live videos now from February to March. And so it's just probably continuing to grow. But now it gives us the ability to bring the car or the digital showroom to the customer in that format. And I think video is coming on strong with all the video companies, not just within Drive Centric, but more people are utilizing video. And this has really been the push that we need to help the customer provide a better experience.
Well, Steve, there's so many things I want to talk to you about. I want to talk to you about texting. I want to talk to you about video. I'm going to make one statement. I was talking to a very successful general manager. And here is one observation Glenn and I came up with the other day. Now, Glenn normally works with dealers with a CRM sales process or audits. And I'm going to just say that that's not my area of expertise. But this is a successful general manager. And she said, Brian, since COVID, I've been really getting into the CRM and watching how people communicate. I've saved so many deals that my team thought were dead. I'm just blown away, she said, on how just answering people, and she was mentioning she was texting a lot of them, how many deals were able to be closed. Now, pause. You could be cynical and say, well, shouldn't you as general manager have always been in the CRM? But when so many people are coming in the showroom, right, we kind of forget. And this was such a great, honest statement. It's like, Brian, because no one's coming in, because the showroom is effectively only by appointment, now that CRM is taking on a new role. Steve, are you seeing any other anecdotal evidence like that people are really leaning in and using the tools that we may have never got them to use under normal business circumstances?
Oh yeah, no, that absolutely. I think that is going across the country. With everybody being furloughed or people being laid off, unfortunately, it's basically forced the manager's hand to help be responsive. I've got several general managers and owners I know they're getting in the CRM of Drive Centric. So yeah, that should be happening. If it's not, then that's unfortunate. But somebody's going in there and monitoring the engagement, and that's what we're really talking about, focused on. It's and I would challenge, like, anybody that's listening to this is, listen to your customers. By reading the emails, reading the texts, reading the responses, and more importantly, understand that we are in this stage where nobody's going to wait for a reply. Your reply time for incoming text message or email is critical to you selling the car now more than ever. So, I mean, Brian, if you just kind of think about it, would you, if you text a dealer and you waited 3 hours for a reply, isn't that a turnoff?
Well, absolutely. But that's where texting, I mean, Steve, I have raved about your platform because you were the first CRM to really redesign the UI and make texting and video part of the native experience. I know that I read every text. I have hundreds of unread emails. So what did it take? A pandemic for dealers to really realize that texting could double, triple, even quadruple engagement rates?
Well, again, I don't know if the pandemic really did it without going in there and looking at everybody's data. But, I think when you go out there, I mean, a lot of people just, and I'm not ripping on all the CRMs, that's not what I do. But I mean, when I go in there and I analyze other CRMs before they convert over to Drive Centric, I ask the dealership is, what is your communication style in your dealership? And they don't know what that means. So I have to say, what is your text email ratio? And that's the phrase we're trying to educate. Because if we know that text messages are, responded to as fast as they are, and you're texting, like, let's say you send out 10,000 emails and 3,000 texts, that would be a 0.3 to 1 ratio, which is lopsided. That's lopsided. You should be 20,000 texts to 10,000 emails, and that would be a 2 to 1 ratio. So if people are doing it on their phone and they're not doing it in the CRM, that's a major problem, just from the liability to CPAs and things of that nature. So you have to ask yourself, the question is, are we using the CRM the way it should be? And that's the number one thing that could be exposed, because if they're not texting the CRM, they're exposing themselves. And again, that's what I always try to educate the dealership. And plus, if somebody says, well, that's my customer, I was texting them, look at my phone, Brian, right? And it's not in the CRM, so therefore it never happened. Don't we say that all the time? So yeah, I think what we get successful on with people using the tool, and again, here's the philosophy. I don't think it's rocket science. If we do the right activity, you're going to get better results. So the question you have to ask ourselves at the dealership is, what is the right activity? And that's what drives me insane. I think if you're a dealership and you're listening to this, I'll ask you this question. Are you doing the task to do the task, or are you doing the task to get engagement? Those are two different mindsets in today's dealership that you have to ask yourself. Because why would I email Brian? Let me ask you this. Why would I send an email to a customer that is texting me? Why? It wouldn't make sense.
Well, Steve, one of my new lines, every year I kind of repeat something that resonates with dealers. And I've told dealers very candidly now, for the last 15 years, we've been calling our websites the virtual showroom, and we've spent so much time making sure the photos are right and the descriptions are right and the price block is right. But anytime we have a consumer visiting our website and land on a car and they have a question, we pop up a form that effectively says, no one's here to help you right now. Please fill out the form and we'll get back to you sometime in the future. When I've coached dealers that we have to serve, not chase, that they need to communicate when the customer's on. Why wait on the point for the next up when you have 100 or 200 people a day clicking buttons on questions on cars? Why not serve them? And to support what you're saying, when you start to have a conversation, when you start chatting or texting with them, the engagement level goes through the roof. So
totally.
What about more collaborative tools? I think everyone has now learned how to run a Zoom meeting, even my 86-year-old mother. So what's the roadmap for Drive Centric to do more live conversations? Obviously, we know that consumers don't know how to pencil their own deal with all the questions. There's lots of questions. So a consumer completes part of a DR deal. It comes into the CRM. Obviously, the sales team wants to jump on it, be more collaborative. What's the roadmap look like for adding conversational video commerce to the platform?
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. We're pretty excited. I think for your show, the event that's coming up here, we're going to be launching this live video or live room. I'm not sure what we're calling it yet, but the concept is basically, if you can imagine a Zoom within the CRM, and what it's going to be doing is, in this whole society, and again, we're talking about in educating the digital showroom customer and how to engage, but more importantly, what tools you need. So right now, because everybody's all familiar with Zoom, it would be very nice to say, hey, you know what? I'm going to send you over this link. I want you to connect with me so I can just talk to the customer. Customers want help when it comes to, let's say, buying a house or let alone buying a car. We always say it's the second biggest purchase that they're ever going to make. They want help. So I think an email and even a text message, I think what we can do is help the customer as much as we can through texting, but also give another avenue to say, hey, look, like I always tell everybody when I'm selling, and I hope you would agree with this, Brian, is there's things out there that you could do via text, and there's things you have to do via conversation, whether it's on the phone or like a Zoom meeting. And I'll give you a perfect example. When I talk price with Drive Centric to any dealership, I do it on the phone. I want to do it in a Zoom meeting so they see me. They can hear my tone. They can hear, see my body language. See, we're doing everything we can to help them out. Why this platform is, worth your time and worth the extra money. And that's the experience. And that's what this live video will do, is help close that gap, especially during this pandemic and after the pandemic, because who knows what the showroom is going to look like, but it's going to be more digitally than anything else. And so dealerships need to invest and have all the tools available to close the loop. Now, the other thing that we had, and we launched this actually in the fourth quarter, and I think there's a lot of dealerships out there taking a look at their business model as far as how they have their staff. And this is an opportunity now to leverage the tools. So one of the things I'll be talking about during the show, during my time, is leveraging a tool like a Slack. Okay, typically we use a tool internally called Slack, where I can communicate with fellow employees or create a channel. What we're able to do in Drive Centric for a BDC person that's working from home, they could do an @Brian Pash. And let's say, Brian, you're working the desk. I could say, Brian, this customer needs payments about $400 a month. They're working from home. They're communicating to you, and you may be working from home or you're at the dealership. But what it's doing is it's keeping the CRM sticky, so everybody in the dealership is using it. And you go out there and say, why is everybody not using the CRM? It's just not sticky enough. So these are all the tools that we're building out in Drive Centric, so more people are in the CRM. And let's face it, the CRM should be the heart of the dealership, along with your people, of course.
And Steve, I don't want to pass over this collaboration tool concept. There's a lot of dealers that are listening to today's podcast that don't understand what Slack is, and obviously some of them are. But here's what I'm hearing. Dealers are finding tremendous efficiencies by allowing their people to work from home, especially BDC. We know that there's high turnover in the BDC. We know that, having more flexible hours as long as the work is being done is super important. So what I'm really excited about is that you're providing collaboration tools so people don't, have to come out of the CRM, send an email on corporate email. They can stay within the CRM, message each other, have those conversations part of the client record, which means then the desk manager can be more efficient. The F&I manager can be more efficient. Everyone can be more efficient working in a comfortable, safe environment. Do you think that post-pandemic, you're going to start to see flexible work-at-home arrangements for dealers who run BDC or customer service centers?
I absolutely believe that. I think I guess the whole idea is you have to trust your employees, right? I mean, that's the bottom line. And you still measure activities of what's going on. And I'll give you an idea right now. Like I'm working on a best practice presentation for driving sales at this event. And one of my pilot studies was a group up in the Northwest called Capital Auto Group. They were on a previous CRM, they switched to us, and they are actually going to that model where it's like 50% in the office or at the dealership, 50% at home. So it's a really good time to implement a new culture change for that type of scenario. And so what that means for them is they're measuring activity. Now, let me tell you what that means, though, what they did beforehand, because I literally just talked to this guy, and this may excite you. They used to be a dealership that's measured 100 phone calls and 50 emails. If you were working in the BDC department, and Brian, I'm sure you kind of know that those models still exist, right? Make
Yes.
100 phone calls and 50 emails a day. You know what they do today? They encourage, and this is amazing that just, because you mentioned turnover. In the last 2 years being on Drive Centric, he's only lost 2 people in his BDC department. Okay. Now let's talk about the numbers. What they did when they moved forward is, because we talk about, are you doing the task, do the task, doing the task of engagement. They were so phone and email heavy that they now said, you know what? I don't care what you do. I want you to do 120 activities or schedule 8 appointments a day. Okay. So they're empowering their team to communicate on how the customer wants to be communicated. Now, if you take a look and ask this dealership what their activity level is, they are averaging about 170 activities a day overall per person in the BDC department. So it's a mindset change to empower them. Like, why do I need a business rule? If the customer is just talking to me, right. I can have a touch conversation with a customer, go back and forth 10 times. You know what I mean? And I'm just being responsive to the customer, and that's going on in my overall activity. Isn't that what we should be celebrating?
Well, listen, Steve, there's so many parallel learnings that are going on that this pandemic produced such a shockwave. But think about it. If you were following an old BDC coach and his or her playbook, which focused on emails and the phone, and you missed the real gold, which is texting. Listen, I'm building a house, and there's a lot of little details going on with this consultant or this builder, this or that. And if they try to email or call me during the day, honestly, between meetings and preparation and video, they're not getting me. And finally, this guy said, Brian, I've called you a few times. I've sent you a few emails. Are you still interested? And I said, listen, I apologize. Just text with me. And we're texting, and all the questions are getting done in near real time. I think we need to ask ourselves, what's a happy employee? Someone who has a schedule that fits their lifestyle, has tools to make them feel successful, and that are building up or, developing new levels of competency. And what I see as coming out of all this is that instead of having people stand on the point and wait for the up, instead of treating the CRM as a stepchild, instead of forcing archaic old rules for productivity, is stop chasing, start serving. Give your people the tools to interact in real time with customers that are visiting the website or who after hours submitted a lead, but do it in a collaborative environment. And that's why I've always loved that you were so video and text savvy in your design. Now I love the fact that you're bringing the live video stream in. Steve, one last thought. When you think of all the dealers that are going to be coming together for the Digital Marketing Strategies Conference, live stream 2020, July 13th and 14th, and they may not think of inviting their BDC manager or their internet director, what's one thing you can entice them with? What's something that you're going to be sharing in a few weeks at the conference that you don't want these sales teams to miss? What's the gold that they may be missing that you're going to be delivering at the show?
Yeah, well, I think the main thing that we're going out there talking about is, how to address a digital showroom customer. And I think in the, hopefully the shortcomings of this whole pandemic, one of the things that, I came from the medical industry that I'm bringing a parallel into this whole pandemic is, how do you talk to a customer? Because right now during the pandemic, to sit there and say that, every customer is treated equal. I hear so many podcasts or, webinars going on. It's to say we're all in this together. And I think the biggest thing that this pandemic is really doing is we need to make sure we bridge the gap. And what we don't do a good job on, and I've always said this coming into the car industry, is people are so concerned at selling the car This is more importantly now is selling the customer. I think we have to acknowledge the fact that, and this is going to scare a lot of dealerships, but I'll go on record and saying it, is I think the customers are now in more control than ever before. Because if I don't want to come to the dealership, Brian, because of this pandemic, you're going to work with me on my terms. Right?
For sure.
And so what we have to do is we have to kind of be submissive a little bit, but this is also giving us the opportunity to, like what you just said, serve the customer. And we have to bridge that gap. So if I talk to a customer that is, really scared of this whole pandemic, hey, Mr. Customer, look, there's a lot of customers that feel the same way. And you talked about it earlier about, your general managers going in there reading engagement. There's a trick of reading engagement and understanding the customer's level of concern. I mean, there's just still a lot of people out of a job. How do you talk to a customer that may be out of a job? Do you kill that customer? What do you do in the CRM? How do you follow up with it? So, those are the things that in the presentation that I'm going to be talking about is different situations and showing live results of digital retailing with customers selling cars an hour away from the dealership during the pandemic. It's all about the customer's experience. That's what we go out there and promote. That's what we should be celebrating at the dealership, not doing the task to do the task and just be responsive. Customers are buying a car still 14 days, 80% of the time, some faster than others in 3 days. I mean, if you take that number, it's like a huge chunk of that is in 3 days. People are buying cars faster now than ever. So we have to acknowledge that, and we have to change our behaviors in the dealership to focus on just talking, just helping the customer get them to what they want to do, and that's buy a car.
Well, Steve, you hit the nail on the head. Everyone is going to be coming to DMSC this year virtually to learn from the best of the best dealers and how they pivoted. We're going to be talking with dealers who went to a single point of contact and got rid of F&I. We're going to be talking to dealers who've reduced their sales force by 50% and are selling the same amount of cars. We're going to be talking with technology companies just like yours who are saying, hey, this is what we've learned about how to communicate with remote selling opportunities when we can't just say, come on in, or get them in. We're going to be talking about the marketing campaigns that are really working today to, as you mentioned, Stephen, to be sensitive where the consumer is at, but also build confidence that it's a good time to buy a car. There's going to be an amazing collection of folks. So if this is the first time you're hearing about the Digital Marketing Strategies Conference, you should know this is our 11th year. We normally run it in the Napa Valley. But due to the pandemic, we're going virtual, which is going to open up the conference to hundreds of more automotive professionals. So go to digitalmarketingstrategies.org, take a look at the agenda, the speakers, and if you sign up before June 30th, you will unlock a dozen other skills building workshops from my training library at no additional cost to you. And all of the conference content, all the speakers, all the workshops, Steve's workshop and presentation, and all the skills building workshops will be online for 30 days. So you can go back as many times as you want and really apply the great knowledge that will be shared this year at DMSC. This podcast is part of a series called The Road to DMSC. And normally every Monday I release a new podcast, but this special series is to highlight the best conversations, our best leaders that will be showcased at DMSC. So look for a new podcast every 4 or 5 days running up to the conference, which is July 13th and 14th. Then we'll get back onto our regular schedule. We have dozens of great interviews and thought-provoking conversations. You can just search the Pash On podcast on the Apple iTunes Store, or you could go to the Google Play Store, Spotify, SoundCloud, or my native platform, which is Libsyn. You just go to brianpash.libsyn.com. We want to thank you for your time, and please share this podcast with your colleagues, especially those who want a modern CRM experience, modern collaboration tools that work with a distributed workforce and that encourage communication and engagement instead of just checking off the box. Steve, thanks so much for your time. Are you excited for DMSC?
Heck yeah, man. It's our first time going, as a startup, we got to kind of crawl before we're walking, before we're running. So we're excited to be here for the very first time. So, and like I said, just knowing the fact that our technology is continuing to grow, continuing to excite, we're really excited to share our experiences and our knowledge and help dealerships ultimately talk to more customers, sell more cars. That's really what the trick is for 20.
Amen. From your lips to God's ears. Well, everyone, thanks so much for your participation in today's podcast, and we hope to see you on live for the DMSC conference, July 13th and 14th. Thanks, and have a great day.